Hi, I'm Jacinta Parsons and I'm an author. My book is Unseen, The Secret World of Chronic Illness. It came out, still probably in the middle of our lockdown in Melbourne during the pandemic, and it was published by Affirm Press. So this is the first time I'm around people talking about my book, which is exciting actually. It's about the unseen experiences of chronic illness. 50% of us in Australia are walking around with illness of some description of chronic illness. And so a lot of the time we're unaware of the experience of what's going on inside someone's skin and someone's life. So I just thought it was a really important opportunity for me, not that I ever thought I would do it, but to write about the interior world of illness. This is my first book. Before this, I have written small articles, and I wrote an article about shame and illness, and that was what sort of birthed this. I thought, there is so much more to it in its, again, in that interior world that we don't ever speak about, and I've never really spoken about. And so it's the first time I've ever written anything like this length of work before, but it was thoroughly enjoyable experience. I found it not cathartic, but it feels like, and I've said it a few times, a love letter, because it felt so loving and kind to language and give words to something that had previously just been mine. The reason that I wrote this book was because there is never an opportunity to sit anybody down and to speak to them from the depths of who you are. Even speaking to yourself in this way doesn't ever have the opportunity that a writing like this does. It's the truth in as much as we can actuate truth. There is no truth, of course, but to be able to tell this story in its poetry and its love and its pain and its suffering is such an honour. I felt so lucky because we've all got these stories, and being able to tell a story is such a genuine honour. I had a wonderful experience with the editing of this process. I work in radio in my other part of my life and it's very collaborative. So I was pretty prepared to surrender my work. And as it's my first work, I felt really happy to hand it to somebody else for their input in it as well. So I wrote the book chronologically and I added 20,000 extra words in there so they had some room to play with, and they played. And they did a beautiful structural re-edit of it and brought things forward that took us straight into the depths of the story, which I thought was brilliant and exactly the instincts I had once I'd finished putting it down the way I had. It's a beautiful thing to share with somebody as well. We don't talk about that relationship very much. I haven't heard it as much, but it's such a tender experience to be that close with somebody who's editing your work. They have to come inside you and try their best to advocate for your words in the best way that they can. And my editor, Ruby, at Affirm Press was stunning. And I am forever grateful for the work that she did. And she needs far more applause than she's ever got for this particular book. 2020 was, wow, what a year. I found it really hard to write when we first went into lockdown. I was at the sort of final couple of months of writing of the book, and the stress and the pressure of the experience that we're going to shut me down a little bit, because of course when you're writing like this you have to be open and free and in a space. And so I found it quite hard to find that space again, and I'd spend a lot of time staring at a wall, preoccupied with the experience of the lockdown. But what's fascinating about the lockdown for this content, chronic illness, is that the lockdown is like chronic illness. You get, suddenly you're unable to participate in the world that you may normally have been. You are stuck at home. You can't see friends and family like you may have. You have instability in your work. Every feature of the lockdown is replicated in the experience of illness. So there was also this sense of connection with the community around something that had previously been so isolating. And I've spoken to a lot of people who felt the same way with their illness. It's like, finally, we can share a language around what it's like. I don't know how long that will last, but Also, the release of the book happened while we were in lockdown. And in some ways that was lovely because it was also a quiet experience, sharing broadly, but also quiet. But I also feel a little bit of sadness that I haven't been able to actually be in the company of people in talking about this book, because it's very much about other people as much as it's about me. I don't consider myself a full-time writer, but I fell in love with that enormously beautiful feeling you get when you write and you're connecting to something. And I've spoken to lots of writers about this challenge that it brings to you of your absolute doubt and insecurity of your thinking and your work. I think it's a really interesting process that you go through to clarify. And then, of course, the proof and the experience is in the reader. So it's isolated to some point, and then you give birth, and then your child is out there in the world, and that's another experience in itself. I hope I have another opportunity to write again, because I found it thoroughly rewarding. I read Too Much Slip by Melissa Lukashenko in that time, and I found, she's just such a beautiful, raw writer. I also read a friend's book, Monica Dux, who's about to release her book, Lapsed, and I read that and I was like, far out, you're funny. And I'd just written something that wasn't funny at all. And so I was like, damn it. But I'm looking forward to people having an opportunity to read that book, because that triggered me in all sorts of ways that was, really illuminating. And I think she's a brilliant writer. I can remember, I've got a couple of stories, so I've thought about this a little bit. In high school, I had a brilliant literature teacher, Meg Stewart at Blackie High, and we read Jessica Anderson's Tiralira by the River, and that was a profoundly beautiful read. Helen Garner, as well, for me, opened me up to the magic of your everyday surrounds. So the way that she wrote about Melbourne made it magical, and I still feel like I live in that Melbourne because of the way that she was able to see it. And Gabriel Garcia Marquez was my first experience of fall off my chair, I'm never going to be the same again, after reading 100 Years of Solitude, because it transformed me. I'm still, I'm yet to read it again. I'm about to go back in, but yeah, an incredible read. The next for me, I think, is I'm hoping to do some more writing for the ABC, just in small kind of article form, and to see where ideas might come, because I'm interested to know what I might write if I am to write again. And of course, radio is a beautiful part of my life too, and it's such a creative part of my everyday life, working on the ABC and talking to people every single day. There is tremendous magic in our world, and just the stories and the people that we live around. I feel like there's a lot of inspiration that comes from that as well. So yeah, it's been really great too to share the book with people who both have the experience of chronic illness right across the spectrum, but also people that have read the book in a loving kindness to people in their families. I find that a tremendous gift, that you've interested enough to walk in someone else's shoes to understand them. So it's been a really wonderful experience, and I hope that continues, that dialogue with readers around how they've been impacted by the book. Thank you. What an absolute delight. You are my first in person, and it was a beautiful thing to do. Thank you.